And because I'm also a real estate investor, I'm very conscious of the roadblocks that come, because I actually, ever since my first property, I haven't house hacked. They've all been non-owner occupied type situations, which I think we all know are a lot bit larger down payments. And I've seen people, I've already worked with people who have like $700,000 in the bank. That's already come my way. And that person's problem was still down payment. You'd be like, really? He's got 700,000 in his problem's down payment? Yeah, because he wanted to buy a $2 million building and he needed money for not just the down payment, but for other aspects of it. So I think no matter what point you get to, if you become a good real estate investor, your biggest stumbling block will be down payment. So what I'd like to do is kind of talk to you about some ways that can be less of a stumbling block and some ways around it, and really identify that that's the problem. Because early on, I think for investors, just getting in the first deal, it's hard to imagine that, right? They're worried about things like, do I just qualify for a loan and what's my debt to income? But as you're acquiring cash flow properties, if you're doing it in such a way that you are cash flowing on paper, debt to income can be an issue, and it's certainly something I'm going to address today. But down payment stops everyone at some point, right? So that's kind of like one of the biggest things that I would talk about. But as we were kind of getting ready for this call, Jordan and Adam and I were talking, and something that kind of came up was getting yourself set up for success from the beginning is important too, right? And what I mean by that is, like, you can be ready, you can know your why, you can do all that stuff. But if it's after you've kind of made some structural errors in your financing or in how you structured your first couple of deals, you're going to be behind the eight ball, right? And some of the people on this call, I know I've already talked to about some of these subjects, but it's still worth bringing up. One thing you can really do to screw up future investing is when you buy your primary residence that you're living in and you have a partner, whether that's a business partner, a spouse, a significant other, whatever you want to call it. If you join and buy that house together, you have just made it much more difficult for your real estate investing from that point forward. I'll give you a great example. And I know actually there's someone on this call that I had this conversation with today. You guys are going to hear me say this all the time, but it's so important. And that's the mortgage math 101 rule I give you. Jordan already knows, right? It's the most important thing any real estate investor should understand, is that for every $1,000 you finance, it's going to cost you $5 a month on your mortgage payment. And the reason why that's important is it's going to really help you make a lot of decisions. One of those decisions is, let's say you wanted to go buy a primary residence, and you and your spouse, and I'm just going to, buy it together. But you do it out of habit, that you put it in both people's names, right? It's like ego, it's tradition, like everything else. But you do that. By doing that, if that's $1,000 payment, and every $5 that you have in debt costs you $1,000 in financing power, that means you just cost yourself $200,000 in maximum purchasing power, which for a real estate investor could mean a huge sum of money, simply because you followed tradition, right? Because you didn't want to hurt your spouse's feelings by not having that person on, or having that person be the only one on. The reality is, what I would recommend you do is whoever has the least amount of income should get the primary residence. And I actually had someone that Jordan and I worked with, and he bought 2 properties. He would, believe it or not, had a trust fund. He had lots of money for down payments, but his issue is he also had a nice house in the suburbs that was multiple $1,000 payment, right? So that multiple $1,000 payment divided by 5 really it ate into his buying power. So we refinanced his primary residence, did not lower his payment, did not get him a better deal. It was about the same. Like, I think his payment remained about the same, or maybe a little more. No, I think it was almost identical. But it cost him a lot in closing costs, right? Like, who knows, $7,000, right? And you go, well, why would you do that? Because the day he refinanced that house into his name, guess what? He had enough down payment that he essentially was unlimited, right? He could continue to buy as long as he needed to, because he no longer had that debt to income issue of this $3,000 mortgage counting against his income, right? That $3,000 mortgage was now in his wife's name. right? So I'm sure you can imagine that this can happen in all kinds of different ways. It's something as simple as, oh, I want to get a quarter point better deal because the car dealer is going to give me a quarter point on my $30,000 car loan, right? But if you take $30,000, and I'm just going to do this on my iPhone calculator, and you multiply it by 0.0025, which is a quarter point, right? That's $750 a year. So for $750 a year, which is, by the way, $62 a month, you're going to cost yourself $30,000. Well, it depends on what the payment is, right? But if that payment is on a $30,000 vehicle, at least what, $600 a month, do we think? Roughly 600. 600 divided by 5 is, doing the math wrong, divided by 5 is $120,000. So is $62 a month worth $120,000 in buying power? If I'm sure you can all imagine, if you just bought one kind of crappy condo for $120,000, how much are you getting in tenant pay down a month? Forget about anything else. Forget about cash flow. Forget about tax deductions. Forget about appreciation. You're getting more than $62 a month in tenant pay down, right? So you lose on that every single time. We always look at the cost. We never look at the benefit when we're, when we're looking at these kind of things. And so you want to be very careful to ever co-sign with anyone. You only do it if you have to. And if you have to, you do it. But the best rule of thumb, my wife and I, if you look at our finances, everything that's not related to a mortgage is in my wife's name. So this would include anything that like car loans, boat loans, any of those kind of things, they're all in my wife's name. I guess now would be a good time for questions. I've got some other topics, but anyone have any comments on that or anything they want to talk about when it relates to that subject?
How many boat loans do you have, Tim?
Well, it's paid off now, but we had one.
Reasonable.
You're all welcome to join it. It was used. We bought a nice used one off of Craigslist. It was, like whatever, a year and a half old when we bought it, and it's really nice. But yeah, it was a $330-some car payment or boat payment. So,
can everybody see the screen, the slideshow there?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I did not have that up, so you guys were probably very confused on what I was talking about in the presentation.
Yeah, and I started to make some alterations on one on my desktop, but I really didn't finish. But so these are like setting yourself up from day one, how you finance other things. We might not think of like, does that matter to real estate financing? But right, remember, financing is your tool, right? Like, I don't know how many of you are going to pay $400,000 cash for a duplex in Northeast Minneapolis, but I don't think it's many of us. And even if you could, it would be a really bad idea, right? It would be a really, really, really bad idea to do that. You could buy 4 properties for that same kind of money, and they would all appreciate, depreciate, get your tax benefits, everything that you get, and you get roughly the same amount of cash flow, believe it or not, because that 20%, that 400,000 would still be equity spread across other properties. So about the worst thing you can do is pay cash for an investment property, unless you're retired and you want to go live on a beach. You have enough to pay cash and truly live off the money. But that being said, if you had $400,000, you could buy 4 duplexes in Northeast, and you would get quadrupled the benefits of having one paid for in cash. But
for you, Tim, regarding what you just talked about, I'm working with a guy right now who is offering cash in that price point that you're talking about, $350 to $450.
Yeah.
With plans to refi shortly after.
Yeah, I think
thinking that cash is obviously going to have more leverage in a multiple offer situation. He's running into, honestly, in this market right now, yeah, it's nice to offer cash, but if somebody's coming 20 over with 20% down, he's getting outbid all day long. So can you comment on that as a strategy?
No, I don't think his strategy is bad. I think that we all have little patience, right? I think his strategy is correct. But, I tell people all the time, you're better off buying FHA even though you can put 15% down, right? Like, I've had some doctors come in and they could put 15% down or more on a duplex, and I'm like, don't do it, even though you can't, right? Like, sometimes we just need to have patience. And what I would tell him is, I think his strategy is correct. Remember, he's going to unlock his capital again, right? Like, he's not putting $400,000 down and keeping it in there forever. He's just using that to get a better deal. So provided he can get a better deal, he's just got to be patient, find the right person, find the deal that's, if it's one day on the market, he's going to get outbid, right? But if it's been on the, if they're not worried about it selling, then cash isn't as big of a deal, right? If they don't need it to close quick. But there's going to be a house in December that's questionable financing that he can buy that no one else will, and he can close quick when someone needs to close and move to Florida. That's his deal, but he's got to be patient for it.
Yeah, no, exactly. I actually just dealt with that myself. So I just put a house under contract for a buyer from California today. He's offering cash, but he wants to pay a reasonable price for a house, which is hard because everybody else wants a house right now. And we found a condo where their sale had fallen through a week before closing. This lady already had her next house under contract, was going to close in a week. She was so excited. She had all of her stuff boxed up. She was ready to go. And the sale fell apart. Then my buyer came in with cash and said, hey, I'll close in 2 weeks, maybe sooner. So
That's not the one in Brooklyn Park, is it?
no, it's it's in North Austin.
Okay. There's a deal exactly like that in Brooklyn Park this week too.
Yeah, no, I saw that too. I'm on that group.
Huh?
I'm on that same group or on the.
Well, yeah, you started it.
Yeah.
You're the admin, buddy.
He put it on a bunch, so I don't feel so special.
No, I know. I actually analyzed that deal and passed on it, but I didn't think there was enough meat on the bone. But yeah, I don't know, Adam. Does that help what you were looking for? I mean, this guy's going to find a property. I guess the end all be all. What I would say is he's going to find a property. He's just got to be patient. You know what I mean? And if you're not patient, you're going to overpay. And sometimes it's worth it to overpay. I've said this before too, but like, I feel like every single deal I bought, except for maybe the one Jordan helped me buy off market, that I knew the day I bought it, I felt like I overpaid. Now, whether I did or not, in hindsight, I don't think I overpaid on anything. And I would have gladly paid the same price over again, many, many times over. But really, that one that Jordan helped me buy a year and a half ago, which we're going to talk about tonight, that one, I didn't even want to buy a property, but it came across and it was too good to be true. And I'm like, I have to buy this property now. Everything else has pretty much been like, I don't know. I don't think I can pay 1 penny more for this house, And so I think we always get caught up in this thing of, that we're paying the most possible. And sometimes it's worth it to pay a little bit more to get the right property,
Yeah, and I think that comes back to being in a strong market too. So both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Austin are very strong markets that are growing, and they have a thriving economy and all sorts of people moving there. So if you follow the trends, both of these markets they're not losing people. There's parts of the country who are losing people to both of these areas. I don't know that I would want to invest in those parts of the country, but in areas like Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Austin, I'm very confident they're going to keep appreciating. So know your market and invest in, and even the submarkets there, Tim. You talk a lot about Northeast Minneapolis. It's obviously still a very hot place, and it's growing a lot. You know what areas to invest in every city. What areas are investing, and you can kind of see or are growing, and you can kind of follow that trend. So no matter where you are, just follow the trends in your city and make sure that you're buying in an area that's going up. So real quick about how to find a property. So believe it or not, we actually made this presentation a few years ago. Nothing has changed. Deals are hard to find now. They were hard to find then. They're even harder to find now. There's lots of different ways you can find deals. You can find them on the MLS. I actually, believe it or not, have bought all of my properties off the MLS. I don't think that's so much a function of being an agent. It's just that's where you're going to find the most deals. There are off-market deals, like the one I found for Tim was through my accountant's cousin. Um, I find off-market deals every so often from people that just need to sell. The best off-market deals are direct to seller off-market deals. So my accountant's cousin was selling this deal. The off-market deals you see most of the time are through wholesalers or through realtors, and they're priced at or above market, and there's something wrong with them a lot of the time. So off-market deals aren't necessarily great deals, and it's easy to think, oh, it's off market, it's going to be this great deal, but I found in most cases they're not. So everything I've bought has been off the MLS. I'm under contract on some houses right now that are through another realtor. You know, it's all through a realtor somehow that I found them. Friends and family, this actually can be a great way to find properties. So my cousin was talking to his neighbor one day, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing, Norm? How's everything going?" And you could tell by the name Norm, he's an older guy. "Oh, I'm actually moving here soon, and I'm trying to figure out who to sell my house to. This Homevestors place, which is those We Buy Ugly Houses signs, offered me $100,000." And he's like, "Hey, your house is worth $300,000. My son wants a house. We'll pay you $200,000 for it." And he said, "Oh, I really like your son. I'll actually do it for $140,000." So his son, my second cousin or whatever you'd call him, bought this house for $140,000. It was appraised at $320,000 when he bought it, not even rehabbed at all. So all he had to do was be nice to his neighbor. So don't be a dick. I make sure I make a point when I'm on walks. I talk to all of my neighbors. I make sure I know my neighbors. I know what's going on. I'm nice to them. So if they're ever looking to sell their house, I hope that I'm the first person they talk to. They all know what I do too, and I know I'm a real estate investor, so that doesn't hurt. Zillow, people talk about. Oh, we've got more people here. Oh, sorry guys. I got a couple people that just joined. I need to let them in. We talked about, buying properties on the market. Sometimes properties on Zillow are for sale by owner. What that usually means is the owner doesn't know what they're doing. And I actually just listed a property from an owner who could not sell it for sale by owner on Zillow in the craziest real estate market of all time. So you would assume, oh, hey, you just light something on fire and throw it in the street and somebody's going to buy it right now because we have no inventory anywhere. That's not the case. If it's not properly marketed and it's not put together right, it's not going to sell. So these for sale by owners that you see sitting on Zillow, a lot of times they're overpriced. A lot of times the seller is hard to deal with, but sometimes they can be great deals. The most important thing is identify what you're looking for and what works best for your next investment. Beyond this, identify what works in your market. So in both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Austin, nice single family houses are almost never going to cash flow. They're just not. There's so many people looking for homes to live in. It's just not going to work. But in both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Austin, multifamily properties that need a little bit of work can be great investments. So look for something that's going to work. Maybe it's condos in your market. Who knows? People in a lot of markets right now want to be out of condos because they want more space. They want a yard. They want to be away from people because this whole coronavirus thing has made us be locked in our houses for so long. People don't want anything to do with being in their tiny little condo. It was really convenient when everything was open. Now there's nothing open and they want a yard. So figure out what works in your market. Talk to people that are making deals work right now, and then you're going to have a much better chance at making things happen. So figure out what kind of neighborhood and what kind of property you want to buy. There's A, B, C, and D neighborhoods. In both these markets that we're talking about tonight, there's not really a lot of D neighborhoods, or what I would call D areas, and those are high crime, violent, you wouldn't want to leave your car on the street type of area. In both Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Austin, there's not really any of that. But there's absolutely C and B and A neighborhoods in both these cities. but there's also A, B, C, and D properties. So when you're looking for your next property or your first property even, figure out where you feel comfortable living and what type of property you want. This duplex I'm in right now was, in my eyes and the eyes of an FHA inspector, not livable when I bought it. So we had to do repairs before closing just to even buy it. And then I totally remodeled it after closing. So you got to figure out what you're comfortable with. I don't know that everybody would be comfortable doing that for their first property, but it absolutely works well for me. But lastly, get out there and make offers. You'd have to make offers. You know, you've got to make offers to make something happen. You're not just going to sit and browse the MLS or browse Zillow or talk to so many family and friends that a deal's just going to fall in your lap and say, hey, buy me. You got to make offers and you got to make your intent known. And I know everybody out here is doing that right now, but it typically takes between 3 to 9 offers and 3 to 6 months to find a property in my experience. So get out there, pound the pavement, make it known what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and you're going to be in a much better spot.
I have a question about that.
Sure.
I'm in northern Minnesota, and one of the roadblocks I've hit when it comes to making offers is the sellers are requiring a letter of approval from a bank. And what I run into is my small town banks, I work with 2 of them, and they're so just overwhelmed with the current real estate market that it's taking like 72 hours, and I got to go through kind of a little bit of rigmarole, credit check, that type of thing to get that letter of approval. I finally have it now to a place where I can get a kind of a semi-standing letter of approval, but they want to pull my credit every like 3 months. And so I guess, how do you guys handle that and navigate making those offers and not having your hands tied in the interim, or being able to make offers quickly and timely? Because in this market, they're gone. The good deals are gone within 24 hours.
I'll let Tim answer that because he's definitely the authority there.
I was going to see what you had to say about it first, but well, a couple of thoughts that I have is, number one, it is important right now. I think all lenders are busy, so I'm not going to try to pretend that we're not either. A few weeks ago, if someone came to me for pre-approval, I was telling them 7 days. So to give you an idea, we're now down to, we would like 3 days, but we could get it done in 1 if there was a real reason to do that. But everyone's really busy right now. The catch is you should be able to get a deal pre-approved and kind of reuse it. And if you're doing a conventional type loan or a residential loan, the commercial lending, they put more emphasis on the property. So they'll never give you just a blanket pre-approval. And I know that because I broker them. So what my wife and I do when we broker them is we basically act like the middleman, and we do what they won't do, which is we have to step up and go, this looks more or less good. Obviously, we don't know what the property is. We can't give a true, this is a done deal situation, but we know roughly what the deal has to look like to be able to write a pre-approval letter, and we just write them when they won't, is what it comes down to. We're brokering it, so we're able to do that as a broker. We have the authority to write that letter where they won't, and that's how we get along around it. As far as pulling credit every 3 months, in technically speaking, your credit report, at least by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac standards, is good for 4 months, which means that but that's from the time we pull it to close. And if it takes a month to close, that means every 3 months or so, you kind of need a new report. The catch is as a realistic, rational loan officer, I know that if you haven't gone out and bought a Harley, your credit hasn't changed all that much in the last few months. And if you tell me you're not putting lots of money on credit and all that stuff, I'm generally going to not pull your credit, even if it's been 6 months since we pulled it, with one exception. If your credit's right at a point where if it goes down by, let's say, 3 or 5 points, we all of a sudden have a real problem, then every 3 months I'm going to be checking it because I got to know, right? But only if you're making offers, number one on that, and only if it's really, really close. And if that was the case and I was your loan officer, we have a conversation about it. I say, hey, Jordan, man, you're really close to the line here. You're 3 points away from disaster. We need to do some things right now to move your score up over the next few months so that if something does happen, you don't get caught with your pants down and you can't buy a house anymore. So we've already had that conversation. The problem, I think, is, Travis, you're working with lenders who are just not used to that kind of fast pace. You know, they normally don't have to deal in that fast pace, right? They're kings in their market, right? I think is what I'm kind of hearing. Like they are the lenders in their market. They don't have competition they're used to dealing with. Everyone in their market knows them, that kind of thing. And I think that's just a different mindset than what you see in a busier metropolitan area where there's lots of loan officers, there's lots of realtors, there's lots of, you know, Jordans and Adams out there, and they got to get deals approved and they can't wait. So we've just sped up the timelines on those things.
Do you ever, for residential, say, okay, this is where we've pre-approved Travis for up to $250,000, period, and just leave that pre-approval letter at that and not put a specific property address on it so it can be used kind of as deals come up?
Could I? Yes, but I usually avoid it because most realtors think it hurts your negotiating power. So in Minnesota, it's typical anyway that we just put the address on. But could I do that? Yes. Do I do that? Not usually, because I have a system also where you generate your own pre-approval letter. So you just put the address in and it puts the address in the letter and you spit it out. But you could do that if you wanted. There's a way to do that.
And one other question, and I've always been rather protective of my credit score, which is just usually just over 800. But recently I've started to wonder if I'm over protective of that credit score, and maybe just having those routine credit checks every 4 months. And if it drops a few points because of that, is that a big deal? So maybe my question specifically is, at what point does that, you know, what credit number is it? A 780, 760?
740.
Does it make a difference?
The answer to your question is 740, but I wouldn't say you're overly protective. I run into this problem where people won't let it get checked at all. That's overly protective. Like, look, no one can pre-approve you unless you get your credit checked. And when you're shopping lenders, let's say you come to me and then you go to the guy down the street, then you go to someone else, the girl down the street. Let's not get, you know, like you just go to a couple different people. As long as that's within a 30-day period, it only counts once anyway. So that is not like some horrible thing to do. What I do try to avoid, though, from my point of view, is if you're an investor and you're getting a couple properties a year, that is devastating on your credit. It's not so much just the credit checks, but the length of time that you've had a credit, something on your credit report is a factor in your credit score. So when you take a bunch of new credit inquiries, plus then you have a bunch of accounts that are not that old and you're constantly buying and selling properties and stuff like that, that's really hard on your credit. So the higher we can keep it, the better. But 3 or 5 points here or there is not the end of the world, but I would say be cautious of it, but you don't need to be overly cautious. I do think you could have a conversation with your current lenders and say, look, you pulled my credit, 3 times in the last 9 months and my score has always been above 790. I really don't want you to pull it now until I get the house. Now, if I get the house and it's under contract, by all means, please, I'm sure you need a new credit report at that point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But just to make an offer, it's a little silly to me if you have high credit to demand a new credit report, right? There are situations, so I wouldn't say never, but if it had been 9 months or a year, I'd probably be like, dude, it's been almost a year since we pulled your credit. I can't even rerun Fannie Mae findings on a credit report that old. In order for me to get you this pre-approval, I need permission to pull credit again, right? But that's the conversation we have. It's not just automatic every 3 months kind of deal, because that's just a waste. It actually costs money, right? And most lenders pass that cost along to you too. So it's additional money in your closing costs, which again, it's all part of the deal. Like we can't fight that too much, but like I don't want to run your credit report costs up any more than they need to. And frankly, if you don't ever close, then it's on my branch manager and that comes out of his profits, right? So I try not to overly do credit reports, but does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Having a very responsive lender though is so key to all of this. Like an offer is only as good as its pre-approval letter. So Tim and I have been having a lot of success lately. Not only do we offer with a fresh pre-approval for every property, but we actually have him reach out to the listing agent. Tim's got a pretty decent reputation. A lot of people know him. And just that phone call and that conversation, hey, this guy is solid. He's good to go. So I don't want to speak poorly about anyone. I don't really know the situation, but having someone, in your camp in the lending department who's really responsive, is just like so key to this whole thing.
Yeah, and since you're in Minnesota, Tim can probably help you. Tim, what states can you work in?
Currently Minnesota and Wisconsin, but I did apply for Texas.
Oh, there you go. So that's awesome. Real quick.
Yeah, and I actually talked to Tim today, and I've kind of started down the process of realizing that the lenders in northern Minnesota are a little behind the 8 ball, and that's how I actually found Tim, was on the Bigger Pockets forums, and so I think moving forward, there's a very strong likelihood that you guys will be my kind of go-to lender. So that relationship is just kind of getting off the ground here today.
Nice. That's awesome, man. It's a big thing having, like Adam said, having responsive, educated professionals in your camp helps a lot. So when we're talking about finding the next property, this is going to differ a little bit from Minnesota to Texas. This was written focusing on Minnesota a few years ago. So what to avoid? First property should be mostly cosmetic rehab. No, you can go pretty deep with cosmetic rehab. You can do kitchens, bathrooms. This place was a mess and it was all cosmetic. Floors, light fixtures, and paint will make a place look completely different. And it's not hard to do any of that stuff. Kitchens and bathrooms isn't hard to do. Foundations in Minnesota and Texas are completely different. Texas is all pier and beam or slab. Minnesota is basements, anywhere from field stone to concrete block. There's a few slab and pier and beam there, but there's just not a whole lot. I would avoid foundation work on basements, but foundation work on pier and beam or slab is pretty easy to take care of. There's a bunch of really reputable companies here in Austin that will do it for you and provide 20-year warranties on it. So foundation work is not a big deal here. In Minnesota, it might be a bigger deal, but it's not the end of the world. There's always a price and there's always a fix. On your first property, maybe you avoid those big issues, but if it's, slab foundation, they're not hard to fix. They'll do it quick and easy, and they'll give you a warranty. How you can make money in any market is smells, stains, and cosmetic damage. That kind of stuff just runs people out of the house. If it smells really bad, or if there's stains all over the place and it just looks nasty, again, the floors, the paint, and the lights, the ceilings, that kind of stuff's really easy to take care of. So if you see water stains or even a little bit of mold or mildew in bathrooms, that stuff's super easy to take care of, guys. Don't worry about that. Definitely get it checked out by a reputable contractor or professional, but my bathroom here had some mold. My first house here in Austin had a bunch of mold. You cut the drywall out, you clean stuff up, the mold's remedied. My first house hack in Northeast Minneapolis actually was disgusting inside, and carpet, paint, and light fixtures, and it looked completely different. But if you can add bedrooms, that's another great way to add value. And that's going to differ from Texas to Minnesota. In Minnesota, you can finish basements and attics. In Texas here, you can finish garages, carports, unused space that's kind of used as an interim space. Those are great things to finish into bedrooms if you can pull it off. Garages are probably my favorite, but adding bedrooms is going to add so much value to your house. Renovating kitchens and bathrooms is probably next on the list. That kind of stuff, people love it when they walk into a bathroom and they say nice tile and they see, nice fixtures, and that stuff's not that expensive to do. Same thing with the kitchen. You can pull out cabinets and put new cabinets in for not a lot. Windows, you can get windows done for $400 to $600 a window. They're not a big deal. Nothing really is a huge deal. I haven't built anything new, so I can't speak to that, but renovating stuff, it's usually just plug and play. and cleaning up old stuff that's there. So when you're looking for your next properties, if you're in a good enough spot to have a first property, you're in a great spot. But if you're looking for your next one, you've got to get creative to find a deal in this market, and looking for nasty properties is definitely the best way to go. Winning an offer. You want to be realistic, like Tim talked about. Every $1,000 is $5 on your mortgage payment every month. That's not a big deal. So you can go over a little bit just to win, and it's not going to kill you in the long run. But you want to look at comps. You want to look at the rental comps. I'm actually going to do a video on rental comps here soon. I'll put that on YouTube. Just how to find rental comps and how to figure out what your rent is going to be is very important. So I would say 9 times out of 10, the rent on a unit is not where it should be. There's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't be there. The unit's usually not in the best shape if you're looking at a fixer-upper. The tenants may have been there for a long time. The landlord may just not care because they bought it for a cheaper price than you, and at that rent, they're making money. But no matter why it's that way, you need to figure out what the rent should be and figure out how you're going to get it there. So that's my first thing I do is figure out what the rent should be, and then I figure out what I need to do to get it there. So figure that out, and you'll be in a good spot. You need to write offers based on numbers, not emotions. What that means is you have to, as an investor, that's different. You have to get over the mindset of, oh, I'm not going to pay this person more than this for the property. If the numbers say you can, who cares? Pay them what it's worth, what it's worth to you, what you can get the rents up to, and what you need to do to renovate it and make it nicer and in better shape. Like Tim said, every property I bought, I've thought, oh, I feel like I'm paying kind of high for this property. And I haven't bought anything that I felt like, oh, I just stole this from the seller. But I've always bought stuff that I'm comfortable buying because I know it's going to be a good deal in the long run. You don't want to nickel and dime people. I've seen people walk away from offers. I thought I'd seen it all. I've seen people walk away from offers over a few $100s in the last few weeks. Oh, I'm not paying them that price, and it's like $500 higher. Like, dude, that's $250 a month on your mortgage, $2.50 a month on your mortgage. There's no difference there. But when you get caught up in your ego, you can't see the forest for the trees, and that ends up hurting you. But Adam's been great at this. Make your offer as attractive as possible with closing costs, inspection periods, and financing contingencies. So you're going to have closing costs as a buyer. If you ask for the seller to pay all of that, that reduces their net. Remember that. Your closing cost is always money off their net. So if you're looking at a $300,000 property and the closing costs are $9,000, and you ask the seller to cover all of it, essentially you ask them to take $291,000 minus roughly 6% in realtor fees. So that's a big difference. It starts to eat into their take home. Maybe they owe $250 on the property and they're going to take home that. So think about that. You can cover some. Maybe you can jack your offer up and then ask them to cover some so they still net the same. But that's really important to think about. Your inspection periods, wherever you are, right now they're typically 5 to 7 day inspection periods. I think, Adam, you've done some in 2 or 3 days recently, right?
Yeah, I've been having a lot of luck. If the property is clean enough and new enough, and I'm pretty decent at pointing out glaring red flags when it comes to mechanical and structural stuff, so we have a pretty good idea. I don't ever feel comfortable writing an offer without an inspection, but we've been writing 2-day informational only inspections. So you actually write it into the offer. We're going to inspect this home because if something is horribly wrong with it, we are walking away, but we're not going to nickel and dime you. We know the furnace is old. We know the roof is old. This is our offer. We're not going to, a lot of people use that inspection period as just a chance to pull money back. Well, we say 400, but we know we can knock 5,000 off after inspection. So we throw it out there to the listing agent. We're not here to play games. We're not going to nickel and dime. And if you write it for 2 days, that in an offer can really set you apart.
Absolutely. And that's a big part, like Adam said, a lot of people put it under contract and come back and want all this money off. The first property I sold of my own, the guy came back a couple days after his inspection and said, "Hey, I want $80,000 off. You need to fix everything ever possibly wrong on this property." And then I sold a property recently and somebody wanted $60,000 off. So you never know what they're going to ask. So when you've got a 2-day inspection period and it's for informational purposes only, that's a great way to get around any issues.
While we're on the topic, Andrew Street, who's on here, enjoyed the benefit of this, but I've done this a few times lately. An inspection period is also a chance to wrap some more repairs up into your loan. So a few times recently, we've found, for example, we found a ton of old windows. Of course, we knew the windows were old, but say, hey, all these windows are super old. Would you fix them all for us? Put in all new windows. It's gonna be $4,000, and we're gonna increase our purchase price. So, I mean, it's a lot of people aren't gonna want to. It's not gonna work every time. But if you have a motivated seller, try to wrap everything up into that loan. I know for Andrew, we got them a brand new sewer line, $12,000 expense that would have been cash out of their pocket. Increase the purchase price a bit, wrap it up into a 30-year, and it's a great way to protect your cash.
Yeah, and that works best, that strategy, when there's trust, right? The seller has to trust the realtor and that the situation is going to work out well. So how that's presented is very important. And when it's presented actually matters too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the last one in here that we have listed is the financing contingencies. So making those as strong as possible, not trying to drag that out. You're going to set any sort of time period for them, but talking to your lender and saying, hey, how fast can you give a commitment to do this loan? So you get your pre-approval, but then you need to get appraisals done. The lender needs to underwrite you. There's a lot more there. The pre-approval is just a rough look at your finances. And when they commit to do the loan, that's typically a few weeks into the process. So figuring out how soon your lender can do that is really important. And like Tim said, they're all super busy right now. So check with them first, don't guess. Here in Texas, we're doing a lot of appraisal waivers. So what that means is, hey, say I'm buying this house for $300,000. If it appraises at $290,000, I'm not going to back out because of it. I'm going to cover the difference. But you can also say, hey, I'll cover up to $10,000 less than an appraisal. So if it appraises at $290,000, great, I'll cover it. But if it appraises at $280,000, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have to renegotiate something, or I'm going to back out. There's all different kinds of ways you can make it strong and still make it fair to you. So out-of-state investing. I know both Minneapolis and Austin are very hot markets. And after people get frustrated of looking for a deal for a month or two, they're like, why am I trying to invest here? Why don't I just invest somewhere where it's cheaper and easier? There's not a lot of easy markets to invest in right now, but there's something about investing in desirable markets that the properties appreciate rapidly over time. If you invest somewhere like Cleveland, I talked to an investor today, he said, hey, I either want to buy in Austin or Cleveland. It could not be more different. People are leaving Cleveland to come to places like Austin. They're not leaving Austin to go to places like Cleveland. So yeah, it's going to be cheaper and easier, but you're going to miss out on some of the biggest money makers, which are the appreciation of the property and value add of the property.
And another problem with the low value market is, depending on the rent, is a toilet costs the same in both markets, yet it's a huge percentage of your income in a low value market, right? So when you do need to update the property or you do need to do a repair, the water heater cost is the same. And yet it's 2-3 months rent, or maybe even 6 months, or whatever. Like it might be 6 months profit instead of 1 month's profit, or what have you. And that's something that people don't usually factor in. And consequently, I think one of the reasons why you'll see conditioning being much worse, lots of deferred maintenance in low value areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to remember too that, as a a newer investor, so if you've started house hacking and you're looking at your next property, it may be not the best idea to make that next one something you can't reach out and see. In some cases, it makes sense. My second property actually was out of state, but my dad lived 5 minutes away from it, if that. So he drove by it all the time and told me everything that was going on there. But, you know, I think out of state investing can be great if you're the right person, but for most people, it's probably not the right thing. If you're one property in, maybe don't go do it unless you've got great connections where you're going. You know, I know Heath, you're down in your hometown there right now. Maybe not the worst place to be.
Yeah, so I'm 2.5 hours away from my rental, but I have people up in the cities that are watching over it for me.
Yeah, that really helps a lot. So
Yeah.
my personal opinion on out-of-state investing, having done a lot of it, is, you know, I know for me now, I'm investing where I live because I know so much more about it. I can see it, I can reach out and touch it, and I know that I can make a lot more money here in the long run. Even the short run, I can make a lot more money here than some other market that I don't know anything about that's not growing. You know, I live here because I love it and because it's growing like crazy. Every 5 minutes there's a new company that says they're moving here, and that helps me a lot. Short-term rentals, Adam, maybe you could talk about this. So if somebody wants to get into short-term rentals for their second property.
Yeah. Man, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but it's a fairly simple investment and a very simple process. Furniture is cheap. Professional photos are cheap. Definitely connect with someone locally who knows what they're doing. If you just throw the place up on Airbnb for $85 a night and just let it book, it's probably not going to go very well. There's all sorts of tricks that have to do with availability and pricing. So, you know, number one, team up with someone else who has done this before. But I've been able to make really good money off a very small portfolio of a couple single family homes. You know, the first house I bought, I couldn't have put less amount of thought into the purchase. I woke up one day, I'm like, I think I could afford a house. And I went on Zillow, the first realtor I met, oh yeah, I'll work with you. And then I just bought the second house I saw. And it's been the best investment of all time. You know, the cash flow is really impressive. Easy to manage. It's been appreciating like crazy. And it's all to do with Airbnb. If I would have put it, never, like Jordan said, I'm in an attractive market. Single family homes, unless you're willing to rent by the room or Airbnb or get super creative, are just not going to cash flow. Could say it's really intrusive. You know, I do look forward to the day that perhaps I don't have the Airbnb app on my phone. maybe I still have investments in Airbnb, but you know, I do find myself, I worked in the hospitality industry for a long time before real estate. So there's a certain amount of ass kissing that I'm good at doing. And, if you don't have that bone in your body, you're going to fail at Airbnb. So, you know, like dealing with an angry customer at your normal job, you got to just, when people are wrong, apologize, make it right. But generally in my market, I enjoy about double of normal rent. So I also do Airbnb arbitrage, which is a term that's been coined recently, but when I started doing it, everyone just thought I was this crazy guy who was about to lose a bunch of money. So I rent all these apartments, re-rent them on Airbnb at a monthly rate or monthly term. And so I'll take an apartment that rents for $1,000 a month, and I usually get 1,900 or so. And it works pretty well. So if anyone is interested, you know, reach out to me. I'd love to lend a hand. I don't know if Andrew Street, you want to chime in, bud? Are you still on this call?
Yep, he is.
He's brand new to hosting. We hear him there?
Hey, do you guys hear me?
Yeah, what's up, man? How's your Airbnb going?
It's going great, honestly. I mean, it's kind of like just what you said. You're able to really kind of almost double what you can normally get for rent, and it's been great. And it was one of those things where you had helped me out so much with like just kind of figuring out like you can't just hop into it. It does help to have people around you, and so connecting with those people is crucial and key. But yeah, no, it's been going great. We've had people in there, so we started in July, and we've maybe missed 4 days total. We've had a 94% occupancy rate, and we've been getting monthlies almost right out the gate. So it's been awesome. And normally you can expect like a 22 to 30 day lag time before someone books. And so there is a little bit more risk in comparison to knowing there's a 12-month lease in your future, right? But you get rewarded for that when they book. And the more stars you get and the more you get started to see in the SEO or the algorithms, the better you start doing. So I'm closing in on being a super host, and I'm looking forward to that day.
That's awesome.
It doesn't hurt too that Andrew bought one of the most impressive duplexes around. It's a pretty sweet place. You couldn't pull off what he's pulling off in just an average run-of-the-mill boring property. You know, Airbnb guests like something that's unique. They like something that's a little different. If it feels like a hotel and you're not going to put any work into making it colorful and charming and cool, it's probably not going to be successful. But we are having, I won't spend any more time on this because we have another meetup at some point. Check my calendar. If you want to hear more about Airbnb, we've got a whole meetup dedicated to that, where Andrew and he's brand new. I've been doing it for a long time. We're going to kind of just do like a Ask Me Anything for an hour.
That is
boys.
Tuesday, November 24th at 6 p.m. And it's something to add on there. Make sure Airbnb is kosher with your local municipality. So in Austin here, you need to live in the property. You still need to get a license, but if you live there, you can make it happen really easily. If you don't live there, there's some ways around that, but it's really hard to do. I know Minneapolis, St. Paul's a little easier. Every market is different. So learn your local Airbnb laws, and learn your local rental laws too, because that's going to vary everywhere we are too. So there's Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, and CHBO. It's not a very popular one. It's corporate housing by owner. They're usually typically longer term leases, and they're just somebody in town for work, so that can be a big thing. I know it's a big thing in North Austin around all the tech companies. Just make sure you know your local laws. Typically, if you do more than 30 days, it's not considered a short-term rental. So that's one way around those laws. It's just some more value add ideas here. Adding bedrooms, cosmetic rehab, fixing the smells, adding bathrooms has some value, but check your comps and make sure that's actually a thing that's going to work for you. Better parking situations. So we talked about taking away garages here in Austin. Might not be the best thing for you. The rent you're going to get might not be worth killing the garage to make an extra bedroom. Maybe it will. Adding a washer and dryer where maybe there's hookups or space to put a washer and dryer. People want to have a washer and dryer in their unit. The next best is having a washer and dryer in the building. But if you don't have a washer and dryer even in the building, that's pretty rough for getting high rents. Most people that are going to pay even reasonable rent expect a washer and dryer in the building. If they have to go off the property to do their laundry, don't expect to get great rents.
Or great tenants.
Or great tenants, exactly.
Who here goes to a laundromat to do their laundry? Feel free to speak up, right? Like, I don't think any of us probably do. And even if you do, you dread it every single time, right? So even if you are in that position where you have to, you certainly don't like it. So you're not going to get people who if they have the option to rent a place where it has laundry on site, they're not going to choose your place.
Yeah, absolutely. That also, to the next point too, if you don't have a dishwasher in the property, a lot of times there's space to put one. You need to put a dishwasher in. And it's same as people want to do laundry in their unit. They want a nice dishwasher that maybe they'll rinse their dishes, but they want to put the dishes in a dishwasher. Being able to do your dishes and not have to mess with cleaning them and drying them is a big deal. And again, like Tim said, you can get tenants, but you're probably not going to get the best tenants if you don't have a dishwasher. So think
Yeah. And so you mentioned that it's easy. So here's the thing about dishwashers that you have to understand is there's two sizes of dishwashers, and there's essentially two sizes of box cabinets. There's actually three, but one of them is only under the sink one, right? So the one where your sink is 30 inches, right? All the rest of your cabinets, if they're box cabinets and not custom, are either 18 or 24 inches. Guess what size the two options are for dishwashers? 18 or 24 inches. So your worst case scenario is you take one of the 18-inch cabinets out and you put a dishwasher exactly where it goes. It's best if it's right next to the sink for plumbing and other issues. So you may have to like take it out, move them around, but it's not very difficult to do it all. And if your cabinets don't go in the full length of the wall and there's an extra 18 inches to spare, rather than taking one out, what you can do is buy a new Formica countertop, assuming they're Formica, whatever, a new countertop, and then make the countertop that's 18 inches wider, and you just slide everything over and slide the 18-inch one in. It's super easy. We do it in 100% of our properties. Every single property has a dishwasher. That's how we do it. It's always possible to do it. There's never a time where you can't do it. So it's much easier than you think. But there is installation costs. Like you gotta have a carpenter who will do who will redo the cabinets and or the top. You've got to run electrical and you've got some plumbing. So count on it costing about $1,000 to $1,500, depending on how much, depending on factors. And that's where that $5 and $1,000 rule comes in. $1,500 is kind of a lot to invest up front, but $7.50 is not. So if you can finance it, you're only increasing your cost by $750 a month. And even if you don't increase your rent by $750, you're getting a better tenant and you're renting it quicker.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So big points there, guys. You're wanting your rentals to make you money, but you're also wanting to not be just a complete pain. So make your rentals attractive to nice tenants, and it's going to make your life a lot easier. When you're building your team, what do you need? I put lender here because I think lender is probably the most important thing you can have. If you have a good lender, they can help you get way more deals done than if you just have a lazy lender that doesn't care. People talk about local banks all the time. Local banks can be good, but I've had rough experiences with local banks where they just kind of laid back and they're not in a hurry. And, this is just the way we do things. And, using somebody like Tim can be a big deal in getting deals done.
Most of those local lenders get a base pay and their commission rate is really low, right? So they're paid X amount, but then they get a very small commission for doing your deal. So they're happy to do it, but if it's going to get in the way of their fantasy football league planning, then it's a problem,
Absolutely. Good general contractors worth their weight in gold too. So if you're doing bigger rehabs, you typically want to use a general contractor. A good thing to remember about a general contractor is they're usually not a worker. Sometimes they are. I actually just ran into somebody right over across the street who's fixing up a house. He's the GC. He was doing some work. He had a crew of guys in there. Most of the time, these guys hire crews of guys to do the work for them. So they need to make a margin on that. So if you just need a smaller job done, don't call a general contractor. Call a handyman or a plumber or an electrician, because the general contractor is going to call those same people. They're going to call a crew to do the work. They're going to call an electrician, a plumber, and then they're going to tack on a 20 to 30% margin on top of that. And that's where they make their money. But great to have if you're doing bigger jobs because they make it effortless. A great handyman is absolutely worth their weight in gold because they can do a lot. You can use a handyman to do a lot of the rehab. You can do kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, paint, lights, doors, literally everything most handymen can do. And they're going to charge a lot less than a contractor. A lot of times between $30 and $50 an hour. That's going to save you a lot of money.
I'm doing a huge turn right now on one of my properties. Got people moving out who've been there for years, been doing this rent by the room thing in this house, and I'm transitioning to be a full-time vacation rental. And I just walked through with a handyman this morning, pointing at stuff. He's got his clipboard. He goes to Menards. I don't know, it's $50 an hour. And, you know, he's going to do everything for me. It's going to cost me $400. And then just the peace of mind, having a great handyman like that, who is responsible, on time, you know, and does a decent job, is so key.
Yeah, and another thing, guys, you know, when you get a good handyman, maybe share them with your buddies, but don't be posting them on these Facebook groups because you're never going to see them again. And I know that sounds kind of selfish, but it's just the way it is. You know, I share handymen with my clients and I'll share them with good friends, but I'm absolutely not posting them on a big Facebook group with 20,000 people. Because if that good handyman that's affordable gets too much business where they're never going to want to work for you for those rates again, you got to find another handyman. And I want my handyman to do well, so I pay people right. I pay them on time. I make their life really easy. I make sure they do the jobs they want to do. I treat them right. I refer them to a lot of people, but I'm not posting them on Facebook groups and referring them to everybody that I don't even know. I'm referring them to people that I know and that I know are going to treat this guy right. So yeah, think about that when you start giving your handyman out to everybody. Give them out to the people you like and that you know are going to treat them right, pay them on time, pay them quickly. A good realtor can be really helpful. A good insurance agent is also very helpful. You know, you need all these people on your team. If you don't have an insurance agent, if you don't have a home inspector you usually use, if you don't have a realtor, handyman, you know, good lender, you need those people. Obstacles. I'll let Tim talk about this actually, because Tim, you've got a lot of good points here.
Okay, let's see here. Totally was thinking about something else, so I got to get my head in this. Okay, so yeah, so the first one, this home run thing, this is something that I start off every one of my in-person presentations with. My single biggest regret in real estate investing is that I was always looking for home runs and wasn't satisfied with anything less. So I did really well on my first couple investments. So well though that I was actually what I would call greedy, and I was looking for too much cash flow. And that prevented me from buying a lot of really good deals. Now, they wouldn't have been the home runs, but if I would have bought just those base hits over my career, you know, I would be doing this presentation from a yacht somewhere, right? I mean, it's just stupid how much money you can waste by being too greedy in real estate. And so I think it's really, really important to figure out what is your appropriate number. And I'm not asking you to take nothing. I'm not asking you to not profit, but figure out what's realistic and what will work, and then let this real estate grow with you over time. It will make you a ton of money. Being overly conservative in your analytics. So, you know, I've said this a lot of times, but you know, being conservative on your estimates for costs and rent is not the best thing in the world. Now, granted, you should be conservative if you don't know the answer. It's better than being optimistic, but what you really want to be is accurate. That is what's important. Because in this market, if you're overly conservative and you start trying to analyze properties, you will never see one that makes sense ever. Yet Jordan and I are helping people buy properties all the time, and just a few years later, they are making good money on them, right? Like, I mean, I know Andrew, we already heard about him. I know he's doing, or I should say, I believe he's doing very well. I know Richard is, right? Like, people can buy properties in this market and make money, but only if you're accurate on your costs. So you don't take and just assume because you've got a really expensive house that it's 5% for maintenance costs every month. Because if it's a really expensive house, the water heater costs the exact same as it does on a really low value house, like $100,000 house. Yet your 5% of rents that you're pulling out for all these maintenance costs are just too much money. So you have to be realistic. You have to get someone who knows what they're doing and really factor in on these numbers. I find that people double their maintenance and CapEx costs over what I normally spend on my properties. is in their estimates, and they usually cut their rents by some arbitrary number. Meaning they look at it and I can say, hey, let's talk about your rental estimates. What do you think that's going to rent for? And they can tell me exactly what they think it's going to rent for. Yet they're using an arbitrary $100 to $200 less per month. Well, of course you can't find a deal. You just took something you, as a consumer, know exactly what the rent should be and lopped off all of the profit, right? So that's really important. Just not looking for opportunities, meaning that like a lot of the properties that you find do need some work in order to make them their best self, right? I mean, they are dumpy. That's why the people are selling them, because they gave up many years ago and they've been just juicing them, right? And they've been sucking them dry and they need a little life put in them. But those opportunities a lot of times are where you can make your money. Debt pay down. I mean, this is just as simple as if you've got a lot of debt, eventually that's going to hurt you with your debt to income, right? So keeping your debt low and using extra money like cash flow to pay down your debt so that you are a better borrowing risk for future properties. Simple concept, but it's important to mention. If you don't have a guide or a mentor, how do you know some of these things? How do you figure out your costs? How do you figure out your rent? How do you know what an opportunity looks like, right? And there's so much access to information out there that you can just pay attention in some Facebook groups and see what other people are doing, and that'll help. Or go to these meetings and find out like real case studies. But I would be looking for mentors, guides, and case studies to see what other people are doing that makes sense.
Yeah.
The 5% per year plus cash flow plus depreciation plus amortization is looking at like appreciation rates, right? So at the time that this slide was created, we were looking at what the appreciation rate was in the Twin Cities, and that's how much someone made in appreciation per year was 5%, right? And when we're usually looking at it, and a lot of you, I know many of you on this call, you know that most investors look solely at cash flow and that's their only thing they look at. And it's like 100% of the decision that they make, but they ignore the other factors and how they make money. And if you truly look at how you're going to make money on most of your properties, somewhere between 25 and 30% is going to be from cash flow. So don't ignore the other 70 to 75% of your profits, because when you ignore them, you start looking for home runs in the cash flow market and you overlook everything else. And instead of being retired on a yacht, you're me. Which, don't get me wrong, I do very well in real estate, but I could have done a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Tim. So people really look at cash flow. They're like, well, I want to make $100 or $200 a property. Maybe I want to make $300 on this duplex. What is $300 a month really going to do for you compared to buying something that's going to appreciate maybe 10% next year? So I know between September of last year and September of this year in Austin, appreciation was over 10%. So if you bought something that was even negative cash flow last year and you held it for this year, let's say you bought a $300,000 property and you held it till this year, it's worth $330,000, maybe $335,000. You sold it this year or maybe next year, so you don't have to pay taxes on it. You made $50,000, $60,000 there just by buying a property. And that person that was looking for, I have to make $300 a door, they made, what's that? I'm not awesome at math. That's $7,200. They bought in the cash flow market. They made $7,200 in 2 years. You made $60,000 in 2 years by buying something that had just some positive cash flow and was in a great area that was going up. So I don't know about you guys, but I'll take 70 grand any day over 72,000. That's not to say to invest for appreciation, because I don't think that's smart. I think you need to invest for cash flow and appreciation. Invest for cash flow so you don't lose the property, but invest in areas that are likely to keep appreciating, where people want to live. That's where you want to be. That's where I want to be personally. That's my investment strategy. I'm not investing to just only retire, or I wouldn't be investing in Austin, or I would have never invested in Minneapolis. And I'm investing to grow equity so I can reinvest that equity in things like apartment syndications and bigger projects outside of these markets. So I like investing in smaller projects in hot markets, boosting that value quite a bit, and then putting that money elsewhere. And that works really well for me. And we're actually going to have a meetup. Tim's going to be there. I'm sure Adam will be there too, about passive investing here in a few weeks. I think that's at the end of December. We'll be talking about passive investing and what that looks like, what you need to do to get started in it. That'll be December 10th at 7 p.m. Here's some success stories. People people on our panel here have helped. So we had a West 7th in St. Paul, Minnesota, that picked up a property, did a small rehab on it. He paid down $30,000 in student loans. This was in 2018.
So what he means is in 9 months, he bought the property, fixed up, sold it, and paid off all his student loans,
Yeah.
and was 100% debt free just by buying a property and doing some work.
Tim, I can't remember this Airbnb to 20 units.
Let's see here. I can't say that I remember who that was either at this moment, because it wasn't me, because I had 20 units at this time, but it wasn't in 3 years, and it wasn't. So I don't remember who that was either.
I did something.
Maybe we made it up.
Make it up. I did something similar. So I started with a duplex that I
Oh yeah, because you had 18 units and you bought the thing down in. Dude, that's you. Because here's what happened. This is when you had 18 units plus you had just bought the place down in Austin.
Oh yeah. So I did an Airbnb duplex and made a bunch of money off that. I bought a property, I fixed it up, moved the money into another 18 units, and then also bought a 2-unit in here in Austin. We have a client that moved to North Carolina in a year and made a bunch of money. He bought the property for $260 or so. I think he sold for $320 or $330. Fixed it up himself, did a great job. He lived for $600 a month, and he got like 20 or 30 back. Just all sorts of ways you can do this by starting house hacking and then just continually moving on. Most investors I know started house hacking. But yeah, that's our presentation, guys. Absolutely open for questions. Anybody's got any questions for Adam or Tim or me? We're open for you.
Where did you buy that Airbnb duplex that you purchased? What city?
Actually in Northeast Minneapolis in 2016.
Okay.
What
did you rent? Who did you rent to primarily, or who got it for Airbnb? Was it like monthly, weekends, or
monthly? I got sick of having people because that was in my unit. So another thing you can do when you're house hacking is you can rent out the other unit either on Airbnb or just long-term rental, and then you can rent out rooms in your unit on Airbnb or long-term rental. So what I did on my first duplex house hack, I was single at the time. I had a buddy in one room, an Airbnb in the back, and I had a tenant upstairs. So I really maxed out the space. I made money to live there, and I made a bunch of money when I sold the property. This duplex we're in now, this is my third. This is our fourth total. We don't rent out any of the rooms. It's COVID too, so we're a little different about that. We maybe would have if it wasn't COVID, but we have a 3-bedroom duplex, and we just have a 3-bed, 1-bath unit. The other unit is a 3-bed, 1-bath, and we rent that out.
Okay.
But yeah, I think, if you're looking to invest after house hacking, you can continue house hacking. You can use that money from house hacking to continue to add on your portfolio. That's kind of what I've done. I've done both. I'm continually house hacking on one end, and then I'm putting all that extra money to work on the other end. And after 4 years, I am not financially free, but I'm getting damn close at this point.
Cool.
All right, guys. Any questions for Tim or Adam or I?
A question. After house hacking, is there any magic way around putting 20 to 25% down on a property?
Yeah, how long you got?
Yeah,
I am happy to go through that. Can I share my screen?
I think so. Do you see the share screen bottom?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
I opened it up now.
Okay. So I'm going to, I just modified some of these slides so they're not all the same. And there are different loan types that, can you see my screen, by the way? Make sure that, can everyone see
Yep.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's different loan types available. We all know about conventional loans, but there's a type of lending called portfolio loans or conventional loans that are much more flexible than what conventional loans require. So if you could call 1,000 conventional lenders and they will never be able to tell you less than 25% down on a multifamily non-owner occupied. It's a myth to think that if you call 1,001, one of them will be different. That is not possible. It wouldn't be a conventional loan. But you could call 5 lenders or 10 lenders, and if they offer non-conventional products, then those guidelines can be different. Think of it, the difference between conventional loans are standardized guidelines that can't be made easier or less restrictive by the lender, but portfolio loans can. So there are 20% down lenders out there. I actually know of a 15% down lender. I just don't know anyone who's offering their product, but 20% down lenders, and those lenders will allow you to get your down payment from other sources. Some of those other sources could be the seller, right? They could also be like your aunt. So your aunt borrows your down payment. So yes, you have to bring 20% down instead of 25, but 20% comes from your aunt and you actually borrow 0, right? I'll show you a little bit of an example of that in a minute. But because of these down payment flexibilities, you can, in theory, get in with no money down. Jordan helped me buy a house in Northeast Minneapolis, June of 19, and I had exactly $904 into the transaction. The day of closing, that includes, people came into my office, and that includes the amount of closing cost, down payment, everything. The way that I did that is I used one of these portfolio loans, and I took the down payment and I borrowed it from a client of mine, and that client borrowed me the down payment and part of the closing costs. I just miscalculated how much the closing cost would be, so I had to write a check for $904. But in theory, that could have been a check for 0 if I would have just did the math a little bit better. So these different loan types do offer the ability to come in with no money down or very little down, and how you come up with that down payment is very, very flexible. That's a lot of their pros. This thing that says rates are better currently, I wrote that a little while ago. They're actually currently not better on portfolio loans, but they are in non-subsidized situations. They're usually easier loans to qualify for than conventional loans. I think during COVID, they've gotten a little bit tighter, but they are. They have some downsides too. I don't want to necessarily know I want to go through everything because I'd rather answer questions. But here's an example of a deal that Jordan helped me get. It was Northeast Minneapolis duplex, 1836 Taylor Street Northeast, if anyone wants to check it out. It was a $297,000 purchase price. Our rehab was $40,000. If I bought this using a conventional loan, I would have had to spend $74,250 in down payment. I would have had to pay 100% of the rehab costs, or $40,000 in cash, and my total cash needed would have been $114,000. Instead, we use this other loan type. We took the purchase and the rehab, we added them together. We only put 20% down on that, so we only needed $67,400, of which I borrowed 100% of that. Some other differences between these two things is not only are the loan to values different on purchases, but they're also different on your cash out refinances, which is one of the ways people pay for their down payment over time, right? Like you're going to build up this portfolio, and 5 to 7 years down the road, you're going to have all this equity, and you can either keep that equity in the property and have it do nothing for you, or you can refinance, sell, that kind of stuff, pull the cash out and go buy other properties, buy bigger properties, buy more profitable properties, right? I used to think that I was going to keep every property I had until the day I died because I'm long-term minded and everything else. But the fact of the matter, that's not a very good recipe to get rich. And it's really kind of silly. Once I realized that, the world opened up. Now, I had always planned on pulling cash out, but if you can take 10% more out per property and put 5% less down, that really means that for every 5 properties that you would buy on a portfolio loan, you would only be able to buy approximately 2 on using conventional loans, if that cash came from from refinancing, that is, and you're using portfolio on the takeout loan. There are differences in how much the sellers can pay between conventional and portfolio loans towards your closing costs. For example, conventional loans, you're capped by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that they will only allow 2% of the purchase price to go towards closing costs. Portfolio loans have no limit. So in theory, now this had never happened, but 100% of your purchase price could go towards your closing costs. There is no limit. It just has to appraise. So that reduces your cash that you need. Why is all this important? If you're trying to save for a down payment on your day job and you have to put $100,000 down to buy a duplex or more, I would say in Austin, from what I'm hearing, it's probably higher than 100. That's going to seriously limit you and you're never going to be able to scale. But if you can borrow for your down payment, partner with others, and do a combination of burr refinancing, but get more cash out each time you do it, you're going to be able to grow your portfolio better, quicker, faster, and with less money out of your pocket. There's another strategy I like to recommend. I use this on that property that Jordan helped me buy, is I made an A-B offer strategy. An A-B offer strategy is you have an offer A and an offer B. Offer A is always a price that you yourself could not walk away from. If they accept this offer, I'm going to jump up and down and, do whatever, start dancing, right? And offer B is a price that they want. It might not be their exact price, but preferably it is, but then it's with terms that you want. And so you ask them to pay for your whole down payment. These people on Taylor, I asked them to do this. They didn't want to pay my down payment, but they came down on their price. I think it was, I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it was 20,000, maybe 25,000, because we paid $297 with them giving me some money towards closing costs, and I think they wanted $325, but they might have wanted $315. I forget exactly. Maybe Jordan remembers, but somewhere in that range, right? Like we saved at least 20 grand on the purchase price that was already a super fair purchase price that they had offered originally. And so this is a good strategy for giving people, and it kind of takes them off price. If they're really price sensitive and you give them the price, but other terms they don't like, and then you give them another price, they will seriously think about reducing the price that they want just to get the other terms they want. Either way you win. If you're happy with either one of these options, you don't really care which one they choose. I always want them to choose option B, because if I don't have to bring down payment, I can buy more properties. But if they take option A, which they did, I just found a different way to get the down payment and moved on. This loan type, these portfolio loans, because you can include rehab into the deal, it gives you more opportunities, right? When you're looking to owner occupy and house hack a property, it's not a good idea to have major rehab involved, because now you take this 3.5% down FHA loan and you add 10-15% in rehab costs, and you just basically put down 13.5 to 18.5% on that property. That's not exactly low down payment investing. You might as well have just bought something else, right? But these, because you can include the rehab in it, and you have to put 20% down no matter what, this really means that you can offer on more properties. There's more available to you because you don't have to be picky on whether it needs rehab or not. In fact, if it needs rehab, you're probably going to make more money by adding value. right? So, and you start using that $5 per thousand rule, and you say, oh, well, I can get $50,000 of rehab and it's only going to cost me $250 a month, yet it's going to net me $700 more in rent because I'm adding a bedroom here and I'm taking this from a C property to a B minus property or a B plus property, whatever. Those kind of things really matter. And they take a deal that looks like crap on paper and they turn it into a gold winner, right? And so this property, by the way, that Jordan helped me buy, our cost was $337,000. It appraised for $400,000 when the work was done. And I only had $904 in my own pocket. That was because of financing, right? And I always mention Jordan that gave me a sweet deal. He could have brought that deal to anyone. He brought it to me. And I know why he did that. He knew I was going to close and he knew I wasn't going to be a pain in his ass. If you want to get awesome deals bought to you by realtors, don't nickel and dime them, and certainly don't ask them to cut their commission to help make a deal work. Let them make lots of money and make their life easy, and you will get better deals brought to you. Decrease your cash needs, right, by using the correct financing. And you're going to make more equity, more cash flow, and get better tenants by doing this value add type of investing, because you're going to take bad properties and turn them into great properties, which great tenants want to live in. But this cash flow thing, we added 2 bedrooms in that property. In Northeast Minneapolis, a bedroom in that area is worth, in a 2-bedroom, it's worth $750 a month. In a 3-bedroom setup, it's worth 6.25 minimum, probably 6.5 right now. But let's just say it's worth $1,300 at least, right? I had $40,000 into it. 40 times 5 is $200. So I increased my cash flow or my gross rents by $1,300, and I increased my mortgage by approximately $200 a month, right? That's a win. That's an $1,100 arbitrage. And that's just a repeat slide. So that is the long-winded answer to your question. But in my opinion, that is how you lower your down payment, increase your investing, and that's how you invest after house hacking.
Awesome, Tim. You got a little blurry there. I don't know what happened, man.